They say they love me but do me like Lennon. Remember John got baptized on a Volkswagen. Defend myself in ways that I can never mention. Brody saved his skin and now he's in detention. He was 21, now 26, still patient. Screaming free my code till the day they free him. Submarine locked deep in the belly. I got one thought deep in this heady. Oh, how I long for yesterday, like Paul McCartney. Like I'm Ringo Starr, beat with the sticky, let it be. Any kind of rain we won't beat.
I bring to you the future of transactions.
Yes, that's me. So we're already recording.
Yeah. Always already recording. The legend of the Jonas, former CEO of unnamed number of companies. Crazy guy. I can't even tell you half the stories. We just sat here for 2 damn hours telling war stories. This man seen it all, done it all. He's a sales general. He's a CEO general. He's now an acquisition general. You know, we can't talk about his deals, but he just did 2 deals. He just bought 2 companies.
2 deals, yeah.
2 companies. The last, 9 months?
Yeah, 9 months ago.
Yeah.
What is a CEO in waiting and why do you need one?
CEO in waiting. I don't know that you need one, right? I mean, I would say the circumstances that would enable you to need one are if you first of all commit to this journey. The journey being you want to actually buy businesses, right? Probably also more than one business, I would say. Probably in a, let's call it, predetermined sector, right? So you have a sector hypothesis. For example, in our case, you know, we are investing in the HVAC sector as well as in the steel sector, right? So we have 2 sector hypotheses. Sectors where we feel they're somewhat fragmented, meaning there's lots of businesses that we could potentially try to buy, and sectors where we're trying to execute a roll-up strategy, where we buy and build. You buy one, call it a platform acquisition, you then buy subsequent companies and build a roll-up. So if that's your journey, then the question becomes, who is going to be you're the ultimate principal, as like the guy leading the deals, but who's going to be the person, the guy or gal, that runs that entire group as a consolidated, established enterprise, right? Mm-hmm. And in that case, if that's your journey, then it's helpful to find a CEO. Now, your question is a CEO in waiting, because the question then becomes, do you wait until you have bought the first business and then get the CEO? Or, just like you're pitching business owners that you're the right buyer, just like you're pitching the banks that they should lend your transaction money, and just like you're pitching the equity investors to back your deal, you can preemptively start pitching senior executives who you feel could serve in that role as group CEO, and you could say to them, hey, come partner with me, right? In the same way the story goes that Steve Jobs pitched Scully, right? Where he said to him something like the legend says, do you want to sell sugar water the rest of your life or you want to come change the world? You can give them your version of that, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Which is to say, come with me if you want to live, let's go do this together. And obviously you can have, highlighted terms with regards to their compensation. How much shares they would get in the group once it's fully built. What are the terms of vesting? Vesting meaning over the period at which they, realize ownership in those shares. What could the compensation be, having successfully done transactions and having cash flow from those business units such that you can afford a CEO? And that arrangement where they sort of opt in to be the CEO is the CEO in waiting. And only under those conditions does it make sense. Other than that, your ass needs to wait.
But also if you're buying companies from outside of the UK, for example, I'm in Copenhagen, I want to buy a business in the UK.
Yeah.
Then they want someone who is sort of UK resident.
So I actually would not advise, generally speaking, to live, in a whole different country from where you're necessarily trying to do M&A. Now, it just so happens, that I'm rolling with a bunch of guys, right, that live in Denmark and are buying businesses in the UK. But generally speaking, I think there's a lot of value in being geographically not too distant for all sorts of reasons, including sentimental reasons, right? Like the banks, the equity investors. People want to have a sense that, you can show up at a drop of a dime. Now, in our case, all of us, we live in and around Copenhagen, and we're buying businesses in the UK, right? And so to Oscar's point, under those circumstances, it also helps to have someone that can be classified as a local, right? But I would say those are extenuating circumstances as opposed to the point. I actually think, you should probably be somewhat local. There's simply better access to credit in the UK than there is in Denmark, right? As well as a whole host of other reasons. But I think generally speaking, if you can get away with it, just buy a business like in or around your city, right? That makes the most sense, which disqualifies what Oscar just said. But I get why he says that.
Yeah.
Oscar, for once, take some pressure off me. I've done 97 episodes. That's 97 Sundays in a row, haven't missed. I show up every time. I answer all your damn questions. Before me sits a general of this shit, a guy who, has been at war as well, right? Building businesses for the last 10 years. As a matter of fact, I've already told this story, but I'm going to tell it again in case they haven't seen it. This man, Jonas, when he was 22, 23, 24, he'll correct me in a second, was the youngest Domino's pizza franchise owner in the world.
Yes, sir.
And he'll correct me about how old he was. And that's how he started his entrepreneurial journey. Don't know how that went. I think the franchise eventually, didn't quite work out. He then set up a Domino's competitor franchise, which didn't quite work out. But then he hit it big in software. Technology, baby. And here you go.
Would you go about finding a CEO yourself, or would you hire a recruiting firm?
I would say if you're watching this, don't hire a recruiting firm because you can't afford to pay what a credible recruiting firm would charge. Because typically the way they work is they charge some sort of upfront retainer, right? They don't start working for free. Now that might be 5 or 10 or 15,000 pounds, dollar, euro, whatever, but they charge you something. What they then do is they then start the process, and once they've hired a CEO or whoever the job holder is, they then charge you at the point where you hire them. And then lastly, there's maybe the final point of money release, 3 months after the CEO started their work. You can't afford to pay that, right? So I would say forget all that. And you don't even need that, right? Go build relationships, right? Go speak to people. Go on LinkedIn. Still a very powerful professional tool. Try to find, people that could potentially be CEOs and win and grow. And don't be scared. Reach out to people who you're even scared to, contact, right? I mean, it could be someone who maybe was a senior vice president at a Fortune 500 company. Why not? Or it could be someone who built, a very large business for someone else, but maybe they didn't own shares in that other company, right? And the enterprise itself did very well. Whatever, right? So I would say hustle. All of that being said, I was just talking to Jonas earlier today about the fact that, unlike me, Jonas, he's done the different things. He's also he's very respectable professional, as well as being an entrepreneur, right? He's a scrappy entrepreneur. He's just like me, but he also is actually a respectable professional. And Jonas was a hired CEO and actually built a company for someone that then went on to have, 8-figure, enterprise value. And that person sold a big share of that. And that was all thanks to this man here. So you can ask Jonas, right?
Ask me any question.
How would you hire a CEO?
I would say the CEO is probably the most important thing in this setup, because it's like hiring a babysitter. You're basically hiring someone to take care of your baby. And that relationship is probably the most important thing, because if you're going to invest, millions of pounds in a business, and the steward of that business is the CEO, then that's the number one recruitment you're going to make. It's probably going to be the only recruitment you have to make. Absolutely. From a high level perspective. So recruiting a CEO, outsource that whole process is not worth it, because you need to be involved in every single detail in that process.
How would you do that if you haven't tried that before? What would be your advice? If you don't know what to look for?
That's actually a good question. But the good thing is that you set the rules. It's your baby. It's your company. So figure out what it is you want. What is the expectation you have? And think of it from a business perspective. You need a certain outcome. You need a certain baseline. You need certain liquidity. You need certain debt service that needs to be paid every single month, every single quarter. So start mapping out every single component you're looking for in a CEO. Yeah, and then take it from there. So it's not like there is a playbook or rule set you need to follow. I think it all begins with you and what you expect from that CEO.
Fully agree. And the only thing I would add to that is to say there are no rule books. There's guidelines, there's other people's experiences, there's but ultimately, as Jonas is saying, there's what works for you. I mean, even this idea that you're hiring a CEO, makes sense. I mean, it made sense for me. I've had CEOs in my enterprises, right? But maybe don't even treat it that seriously. Like, go find a business partner, right? So if you're the deal person, if you're the one going to do deal flow, debt equity, go out and try to find targets and put the capital together, well, maybe you need a business partner that's more operational, right? Or maybe has a couple of gray hairs, or is much more ready to roll up their sleeves and enter the business, right? And so it can just be a partner, right? It can be a minority partner or a junior partner. So I think don't get caught up in the titles, or the substance is what matters, and the substance is, you win as a team. So think of this as a winning team, and the question is, what's the team that's needed to win, right? And then there's some members of the team that are internal members, and there's some that are external members. So external members will be, for example, your debt broker. That's still a member of your team. Igor is very much a member of all of our team. All of us sitting here, we all work with Igor, right? So when we need some debt, £500,000 or £5 million of debt in the UK, we call Igor. He's a member of the team. And if you need equity, right? We all have, friends, family, and people close to us, or just people that we've worked with, partnered with before, that are members of the team. We pick up the phone and give them first dibs on an equity investment, right? And then you'll have, internal members of the team with yourself as the principal and as the steward, but then you need the operative partner, right? And whether they take the title of CEO, COO, right, board member, or just partner, doesn't matter. The point is, what's the team? And you need someone that's going to hold members of the business units that you're acquiring accountable whilst you set the vision, right? And whilst you attract and accrue the resources, right? So go build a team.
So you could also do a joint venture with a potential CEO, and then that is...
Yes. As a matter of fact, you could do any number of joint ventures. I mean, one of my good friends, Stanley, who just bought a business, I believe they have just bought a business, or they are on the cusp of buying a business. I think they've actually closed that transaction. That's a joint venture between two deal guys, right? So I've been coaching Stanley for a year. He has access to me and my network, and so if he reaches out to me through WhatsApp, and I sort of guide him. And there was this other guy who watches the show, didn't have access to me, but whatever, he found a deal, right? He found a deal that was viable. And so they teamed up, did a joint venture, and through Stanley, with access to me, I introduced Stanley to the people that then put in the equity, right? So Stanley built the team. Someone bought the deal, someone bought the equity. Now they just bought this business, right? So I would say think of it much more as a team sport. It's a blood sport, it's a contact sport, but it's a team sport, right? So the question is, what's the team? So go build out that team. Okay, so here's the interesting thing as well, right? These things are not static, right? For example, Jonas, I mentioned that his first gig was, being the youngest franchise owner in the world for Domino's pizza chain. He then built another pizza chain. But then actually he did something which is a little off the cuff, which a lot of entrepreneurs are scared to do, right? Which was he took a gig, he took a job, right? Eventually a CEO of this technology company, which he pulled essentially out of bankruptcy. And eventually that was then valued at 8 figures and sold, right? So that was a huge success. Based on that success, he was then pulled into another enterprise, which was a financial technology business, a fintech, as a chief operations officer. He then built that up, eventually became the chief executive officer. And, that went through a few transactions in which Jonas also did extremely well and had a liquidity event, had more than one liquidity event in that environment, right? So it's just to say it's not static, and now he's back at it again. He just bought 2 businesses back in his entrepreneurial groove over the last 9 months, and he's building new startups. So it's just to say there is no such thing as a static personality, right? As a matter of fact, what you want is a dynamic personality. Mm-hmm. You want someone who otherwise maybe could have even been the number one, could have been the founder guy, but is willing to maybe work with you because you happen to have the superior value proposition, right? So I don't know, man, do you agree with that or?
100%. What's that book called by Roger Hamilton? Millionaire Master Plan. He kind of divided into, you have your Clark Kent time and you have your Superman time. So you can spend your Clark Kent time like I did in that software business. Actually, why we met each other.
Yeah.
In that software business. Work that, have a good living, and then use your Superman time to to build up business acquisitions and roll up like you're doing now. So it doesn't have to be jump all in and make it or die. You can also do a more controlled risk mitigating process.
You can have your chairman time where you sit on chairs and just hope they don't blow up.
That's cool.
I may or may not be an excellent chairman.
You?
I don't know. Don't judge the results.
Well,
I'm sitting on chairs. I don't know if I'm doing it right.
And you're a man.
Yeah, exactly. Chairman.
How do you evaluate whether a CEO is performing? We talked about that before. And it didn't seem like something that was black and white, like actually difficult.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because I would say, first of all, it's really hard to evaluate, right, how a CEO is performing. And I would say it's even harder if you're not able to evaluate how you're performing, right? It's very easy to point the finger and say it's not going well, therefore it must be the team. It must be the bank, right? But sometimes you're the problem, or at least if you are always where the problems are, then you are always at least part of the problem, right? Because if otherwise, you would have solved them, right? If you're so good. If you are Superman, right? To use the analogy, you would have fixed it, right? So I say that to say, don't be so quick to judge and jump to conclusions as to whether or not you are even in a position to evaluate whether a CEO is performing. But that being said, I think the spirit of the question is, how do you sort of guide the CEO's activities and align those to your desired outcomes, right? So I would say, first of all, be very clear on your desired outcomes, right? What are you trying to achieve? In the case of our HVAC, the outcome was clear. We're trying to go from 0, meaning no HVACs, to a group of HVACs that collectively generate 100 million pounds of annual revenue, right, through sales. So that's easy, right? But what's the number? It ain't 100, right? But again, that's not about the CEO. You know, that's back to the team, right? That's the team effort, right? We have simply failed to attract and absorb and acquire businesses that generated that much revenue for all sorts of reasons that we can get into in another episode, right? So one thing is the KPI, which is, have you done it? Yes or no, right? No, we haven't done it. Therefore, you know, someone should be held accountable, including myself, as well as senior members of the team. But there are other things like, you know, are we on budget? Because when you buy a business, you will always have a budget or a forecast or a point of view as to the financial performance of the business over the next 6 to 18 months, maybe the next 36 months. So the question is, you know, are you performing against those budgets, or are you underperforming? And are the reasons, you know, acceptable, or are they unacceptable? So I would say that these are the two things. Are you trending towards the vision, and are the numbers, you know, living up to expectations? I think those are two obvious KPIs that you would want to track. Besides that, I think it's the soft stuff like, do they just piss everyone off? Because at the end of the day, this is a contact sport. And, you know, I've been in the perpetual state of war for the last 8-9 years. I don't think Jonas has ever known me, you know, not really at war, right? There's always something blowing up, something going on. And so if you can get along and work together productively and, you know, come at solutions innovatively, and, you know, problems are big enough, no need to inflate those problems with personality issues, then I think those are some of the most common reasons why it might not work out. So that's the feedback. And beyond that, man, you know, action. Take action, you know, stop thinking about it, you know, stop trying to like cross every T and dot every I. There is no perfect time. You know, I won't tell you who said this, but someone in my organization, I told them my ChatGPT knows everything about all my businesses because I keep it perpetually in the loop. And I gave him a printout of its feedback of a next set of actions we should take. And he said something smart and snarky. He said, oh, I would love to see what it said when you were buying the last transaction that's now blowing up. And I was thinking to myself, man, with that attitude, you ain't never gonna buy a business, okay? Life is about risks. So take the risks, take them in stride, smile, execute, make friends, be good to people.
Good friends.
And life's for living. See you next time.